Hello, everyone on YouTube. I have seen some shelf tours on YouTube and kind of thought I would like to do a little brief tour of my gentleman's study. A little more than a shelf. I've got a few items besides books, but I kind of wanted to show you. I think you'll find some neat things. A couple of things, though. People talk about a gentleman's study, and you think of that as a 19th century kind of thing, or you think of that as folks that things that really wealthy people have in their homes. I live in a 70s style ranch house. I'm not a man of means by any stretch, but I enjoy old items, particularly antique and vintage books and documents. And I decided I wanted to put together a gentleman's study. So this is done on a budget as well. And so it's something anybody can do if it's something that they would like to have in their home. So we'll go ahead and start the tour. And this is about my third take because I keep making them too long, and I'll try and make this one a little shorter. But my first stop, as you walk in, this wall I've got a little electric fireplace to make it more like a study and some items. But the first item that we want to look at, or that I want to show you, is this leaf from a 1578 concordance. Now, anybody that knows much about a concordance, most Bibles today have a concordance in the back, and they cross-reference different words from a Bible. Well, today, they're pretty easily produced with a computer and software and so forth. But in the 1500s, this was not so. Someone had to physically go through and find all the cross-references and match them up, and it was very time-consuming. So this would have been a very expensive item at the time it was produced, the concordance would be. And it would be something that most folks would only have if they had a fair amount of money. And you can, if I can get it to focus, you can really see the quality of the typeface. It's probably the oldest. This is the oldest thing I have in my collection. Down below it, on top of the fireplace here, I have a 1771 set of Blackstone commentaries on the English law. Blackstone is a very famous English judge, and this was really kind of the first time that the common law was put in a written format that people could read and understand. I'm a law student at night, so it was kind of important to me to have one of these since I like old books anyway. Got a good deal on these. You see the second volume has got a cracked spine. This is an old library set. It's stamped from the Boston University. The Papa's Law Library, I think they call it, so evidently it was in their collection. The typed little sign there at the bottom was in the books when I got them, so I think that was probably from the law library. But just a really cool set. I got a set of brass Lincoln bookends with it. I'm a big Lincoln fan. There's some other Lincoln items I'll show you as we move around. But that's my Blackstones. Very proud of those. I'm not going to open them and show them to you because they are very fragile, and especially the one with the cracked binding, and I don't want to do any damage to them. But really cool item. I also have some personal mementos. That's a flag. My father was a World War II veteran. He's no longer with us. He died in '75, but that was his flag. And then upon his death, had a letter from President Ford acknowledging his memory. That's probably not his real signature, but it's still a very nice gesture. Moving along, I've got a little leatherette seat for reading and a brass lamp. Now, I mentioned doing this stuff on a budget. The chair and the ottoman were a Craigslist find for about $70. And the lamp was $2 on Craigslist. So, moving right along, this bookshelf here, I got in a yard sale for I think $20. But I want to look at some of the items on the bookshelf. This stack of books right here, you notice one on the bottom. It's The Crossing by Winston Churchill, but it's not that Winston Churchill. And that's actually kind of what makes this one valuable because at the time, people didn't think much of it and tossed them out, so now when you see them, it's kind of a novelty. On almost the top of the stack here, I have a book on checkers. This is from the late 1800s. This was my wife's grandfather's book. He played checkers and was a local checker champion, basically. But just a really cool old book. It's not in the best of shape, so I'm not going to show a lot of it. But like I said, just a neat old book. And beside it here, this is a Bible from the Holy Land. This was made about 1973 or so. My wife was an infant. Her aunt went to the Holy Land to Jerusalem and bought this there in Jerusalem as a souvenir. And it's basically just a leather-bound Bible, but with mother of pearl covers that they made for tourists. Very nice. And they look pretty and at this point getting older and more valuable. This shelf contains most of the older volumes that I have. And one of the things I just love about old books is when you find something that has an inscription of some kind. I like to find out something about the people who had the books and kind of make that connection. One of the items I have here, I got a couple I'm going to show you. I'm not going to show you all of them, of course. But it's this ladies' book. Now that seems like an unusual item for a gentleman's study. But Ladies' Book was a magazine. It was a periodic publication before the Civil War. It was the most popular magazine in the United States before the Civil War. And it was very expensive. So this was your upper society ladies, basically, that would get it. And it was intended for the ladies of the time. I'll pull this one down. At the end of the year, whoever owned them would usually take them to a bookbinder and have the whole year's bound into a book. And that's what this is. This is the 1845 editions. And this one belonged to a Lucinda Fontaine. And I tried to find out a little bit about her. Wasn't able to find a whole lot, other than I did find, her birth and death date and her burial plot. She died in 1908. And interestingly, it has a signature inside the front cover from a Mary. I can't make out the last name, but obviously that's not her, and it's from 1895. So I don't know if she passed this along to somebody else, didn't want to read them anymore, or what have you. But that's, if I can make out that name, I'll try and find out something about them as well. One of the things that's really interesting about these magazines, though, is they were the first publication place for a lot of famous authors of the time. For instance, in this particular book, and one of the reasons I bought this one, you see a short story here, and that's just a yellow place marker I have in here. The 1002nd Tale of Scheherazade by Edgar Allan Poe. A lot of Poe's works were originally published in periodic publications like this. So, there's a couple of others of his in here too. Nothing very famous, but still, pretty unique. And you can see some of the fashions there. That's kind of interesting. And just really, really nice engravings and illustrations in these books. I don't know why my camera won't focus. There we go. Very nice. So, a little bit of music, a little bit of everything. So, anyhow, that's that particular volume. I also have here on this shelf, it's probably the first rare book I ever bought, George Washington by Robert Hughes. Found it at a yard sale too, but I had seen it in a rare bookstore before and realized I can pick this stuff up sometimes on the cheap. This volume, I'll show you. I bought it. I don't normally, although you'll see a few, I don't normally buy single volumes of multi-volume works, just because if I want one, I typically want them all. But I got this one because it really is in almost brand new condition. You can, the gold gilt's all, well intact. The book looks brand new. And if you open the book, let me get it where we can see it a little better. The printing is very, very tight. The binding's tight. All the engravings. It's like this book is practically, brand new. You can, if you look, it's hard to see in the video, but you can see the type from the title page. You can see the impression of it on the page behind. You really can't make it out here, but you can. This is an 1898 book. Also interesting, again, remember the people a lot of time interest me more than the book. This book has a book plate from Henry Zlapka. At least I believe that's how you say his name. I could be wrong. But he, as best I can tell, was a structural engineer. And he did some work with the Quebec Bridge in Canada, which unfortunately failed and killed a number of people. And he was kind of a prominent person in some of the trials. Evidently, it had something to do with the issue of the weight of the steel on the bridge. And I think he had tried to warn the main designer, and somehow it all fell through the cracks. But interesting guy. This apparently came from his personal library. So again, there's kind of that personal connection. I'm in law school at night. I've spent 20 plus years in law enforcement, and I'm going to change careers when I retire. But anything to do with law, I collate. I mentioned that with the Black Signs. This particular book, Coran's Speeches. This is a legal book. Coran was an English attorney or barrister. And this book, though, if you look, I don't know if I can make it focus, but it's got Milner scratched in the top of the leather. And if you open this book, there is a inscription in it from, as soon as I find it, Thomas Milner from 1874. Now, a little bit of research, and I was able to discover that Thomas Milner was actually a pretty famous judge around here in Georgia. He was a judge in Cartersville, Bartow County, and I found this interesting article about him. So, again, something from his personal law library, which is meaningful to me. Famous sheriffs and Western outlaws, mainly interesting to me because of what I do for a living right now. A fairly early edition of the Republic of Plato. A really nice bound volume of personal sketches by Barrington. He was an Irish judge. Just really nicely done bindings. We also have an early copy, maybe a first edition, I don't recall exactly without pulling it down, of Darwin's Descent of Man, a really important scientific publication. The next shelf down, these are more modern. These are the Barnes & Noble leather-bound editions. Nothing particularly valuable, but they look pretty. Exception the Chronicles of Narnia. It's actually out of print and developed some value. I've seen them go between $100 and $300 a piece at this point. So they do have some value. Some books that came out of an old library. The old library card's still in them, which is pretty cool. About the Civil War. Pocket watch that was my wife's grandfather's. Salvaged it. It wasn't running, and they were going to get rid of it. And I said, I bet I can take care of that. So I got it cleaned, and it works very well now. Some other leather-bound antique Shakespeare. I love the cover on these. They're very nicely done. Quite fragile though. The leather's a little brittle. Another Barnes & Noble edition. This particular set, this is the Junior Classics published by Collier. There were a number of these published from the 50s up through the late 60s, maybe even early 70s. I grew up on these, and that's why they're valuable to me. Now, this set was not ours. My sister kept those. But I found this set, which is identical to the ones that we did have, and I found them at a antique store and purchased them, and happy to have them because I did grow up on those. The only other kind of, let's see, what else do I want to show you here? There's a book on my bottom shelf it's in not really great shape, but it's called The American Presidents. It's by Herbert Agar, and again, this is because of, and this particular book was owned by a Henry Berryhill Jr., dated 1941, from Chapel Hill, Bull's Head Bookshop in Chapel Hill. And a little research shows in World War II and lived here. So Okay, I'm sorry about the buzzing that you just heard, but I actually got a phone call while I was trying to video. So I've kind of restarted to finish the tour, so I have to redo the first part, and I'll put them together, so hopefully it'll come out okay. But the last book we were looking at was This American President by Herbert Agar and the person it belonged to. So moving along, the next thing here in my collection that I wanted to show you is this sheriff's writ. It's actually a court order ordering the sheriff to go seize property to satisfy a lawsuit. You'll notice it's from county of Litchfield, Connecticut, signed by a Justice of the Peace, Samuel Nash, in March of 1790. So another pretty old document. Kind of interesting, Litchfield was the site of the first law school in the United States. I don't know if Mr. Nash had any connection with that or not. I haven't been able to show that he has, but could have. But it's kind of interesting that those are the same sort of thing. Below that, this is a leaf from a 1600s Bible, and again, you'll notice the print. The red lines would have been added after the fact. This was kind of a status symbol, sort of. If you were wealthy enough and had enough money, you could have your Bible fancied up by putting these margin markers in it. Very nice detail, copper plate printing. You can, if I can get my camera to focus, you can actually see the edges of where the copper plate was impressed into the paper. But just a really high quality engraving. Again, I'm having a difficult time getting the camera to focus. Here we go. So, nicely done. Moving over to this other bookcase, have a modern portrait of Lincoln with a coin. Again, I mentioned I'm a Lincoln fan. My daughter gave me that for Christmas. Personal memento, me as a child, wearing this little cowboy get up and that pair of boots. So I still have those. In this cabinet, nothing particularly valuable, although I do have, that's a portrait of my dad. He made jewelry on the side, and there's a cross he made out of mercury dimes. I really wished I could get that to stay in focus, and I don't know why I can't. Set of World Book Encyclopedias from 1981. These are valuable to me personally. The day that I got those in the mail, my mom ordered them because I always loved reading stuff like that, was the day that John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate Reagan. So I remember unpacking these and watching that unfold on the nightly news that night. A pair of carved birds from Jamaica. My wife and I picked that up on our honeymoon a number of years ago, about 24 years ago. So, some personal mementos in that case. More photographs of my mom and dad as adults and as babies and as a young couple. So, some nice stuff. This bookcase is all basically working books for school and so forth. I have a cabinet where my wife ordered a lot of my dad's medals for me and had them framed. So I thought that was really nice. And in this bookcase, I have more fiction. This is mostly fiction. See Michael Crichton there. I love Michael Crichton. Along with some other things. Some Coke memorabilia, Coke Museum here in Atlanta. So I picked up those things there. Here I have my Sherlock Holmes collection. Now you might have noticed I had the Barnes & Noble Sherlock Holmes leather bound as well. But I've collected these over the years. In a lot of ways, that's kind of what inspired me to go into law enforcement. That middle edition where the magnifying glass is, that's the first one I ever bought. It was actually probably the first leather-bound book I ever bought. I bought it in '87, which would, I believe, was the 100th anniversary for Sherlock Holmes. So kind of neat. This edition, I'm not precisely sure what it is, but it appears to match the first American edition of Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, I found this in a thrift store for about 50 cents. I paid next to nothing for it. But come to find out, I think it's a pretty valuable edition. Now, the difference is the copies I have seen of the first American edition had the title and the title graphics in white instead of black. So I don't know if this was a special first edition in the U.S. or exactly what it is. If anybody out there knows, drop me a message and let me know. So that's that. Science Encyclopedia, another multi-volume set. There's a bottle of opals my dad had for making jewelry. I showed you the Mercury dime silver cross over there that he made. And then I've got a curio cabinet with some stuff from my law enforcement career. It's also got some mementos from my mom and dad. One of the more interesting items is this Morgan silver dollar, and the date on it, if I can get, again, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with the camera, 1882. Got some scratches, but not too bad a condition. Pretty cool. So that's pretty much the brief tour of my gentleman's study. So thank you all again for taking a few minutes to look, and we will I look forward to, I hope everybody liked it, and if you have any comments or anything, please let me know. Thank you.